He's one of South Africa's greatest rugby players, a Springbok captain, a former World Player of the Year, a Rugby World Cup winner, a European Cup winner, and an English Premiership champion. He's now a full-time dad, part-time car renovator, and occasional rugby analyst on SuperSport. And now Schalk Burger can add the title of Maverick Sports podcast guest to that impressive CV. I'm Craig Ray, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Schalk into the studio today. How's it, Schalk?
Thank you very much. Thank you to this prestigious opportunity. I think probably tops the list of achievements I've had so far in my career.
that list of things, when you hear that read back to you, do you ever sort of sit back and think that was quite a good career?
I think whilst you're playing, no. You know, you obviously, because the next thing is this coming up, you know, you win an award or you win a trophy when you, like similar to the Springboks now, you know, it's a young Springbok team who won the World Cup, you know, the next thing on their mind is Super Rugby. So you don't really get a chance to reflect. You get caught up in your own career, so to speak. But now that I've had, you know, time to reflect, you know, we achieved quite a lot of things, and, you know, it's nice to reminisce. You know, there's a few old group chats, and, you know, you're already starting the chat like in my days when we used to win trophies and individual accolades. But I guess, yeah, once you finish, it sinks in, and, you know, you realize that you've been on quite a journey. It was a 17-year rugby career, and I loved every moment of it. Yeah,
and I mean, you come from that generation where it wasn't just rugby at school. I mean, you did other sports, and I think maybe we just started at that point, because so many schools these days, you just play rugby from, you know, the first team gets together in December and their first game's in March, and you know, they play till August or September, so they're taken out of cricket, they're taken out of water polo. You did all those sports, I think, as a kid. You played cricket. So what's your sort of take on the sort of obsession with rugby? Do we need to go that way to be successful, or can there be a balance?
I suppose it's hard, you know, because, you know, there's pressure everywhere. You know, if you're a high school coach at Paarl like Peter Russo, there's pressure. There's pressure to perform. You know, how do you prepare your team better? Is by starting earlier, you know, getting them fitter, stronger, getting better prepared. And we all know preparation beats pressure. But, you know, when I was at school, there was already a little bit of pressure, but, you know, I was just, you know, doing both. You know, I used to start playing second team in the beginning of the year for Paarl rugby because, you know, I missed the whole preseason because I was playing cricket. Often missed the warm-up games and then one or two early league games. You know, but I just wanted to play both. You know, I actually loved my cricket more than I did my rugby. And I think, you know, what is unique to South Africans, and it's partly because of the climate, but I think partly because of opportunity when we were younger, is that we've got a lot of multi-talented sportsmen. A lot of cricketers can play rugby, football, you know, a lot of, you know, good rugby players who were great cricket players. And I was just one of those many in our generation. I do think, you know, playing different sports give you a different skill set.
Yeah.
Not only, you know, feeling-wise for catching and passing, but also, you know, vision-wise, and then preparation, because there's a massive difference in preparation between rugby and cricket. Rugby is a team sport, flat-out team focus, where cricket is a team sport, an individual sport with a team aspect. You know, for you to do well, you've got to get your own ducks in a row and say, listen, I've got to go score 50 or 100 runs or take 5 wickets or... And that's individually based, you know, and then the team aspect follows. So I think a lot of my preparation and approach to rugby was actually stemmed from playing a lot of cricket. Now, I was super relaxed when I played rugby, but I knew exactly where I wanted to be, you know, individually. Well, I think sometimes in a rugby team, you can get a bit lost between what you want to achieve and then, you know, what the team's, you know, the team's achievements or what they want to achieve during a game can be. And you sort of get lost with and lose focus of, you know, I still got to go do my job. So I really do think like players, especially young kids, should be exposed to as much sports as possible, and then try and focus later on, you know, narrowing it down. Because I know kids now start at 14. I'm a rugby player. You know, I didn't know at 14 what I wanted to be, whether it was a golfer or a cricketer or a rugby player. I mean, I think you ask AB de Villiers the same question and he's got no idea. Jacques Callis, same story. So, I'm not a massive fan, but unfortunately, you know, it's a sign of the times, and, you know, people seem to specialize younger and younger. I would hate to be at school now and, you know, only be a rugby player when I'm 40.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's so much to be gained. I'm a big believer that football is such a good sport because it's a 360-degree game. You know, you've got to pass to where the guy's going to be, not where he is, and that kind of thing, which you don't get in rugby. And I think all those skills can translate and cross over into other sports.
Yeah, I think Australia's got the best game for a youngster to play is Aussie rules. Yeah. No, there's no rules. And you kick and pass and you run around. Yeah, that's what you do.
Forward, backward, any way you like.
Any way you like, you know. And I was exposed to quite a lot of football with my kids growing up in the UK. and it's such an easy game. Everyone runs, everyone can kick a ball.
Mm.
Rugby is quite a difficult game to play when you're young.
Yeah.
Because there's so many technical aspects to it.
And
Rugby
you can't play on concrete. You can play soccer, two shoes as goals and
rugby,
car park.
rugby is a religion here in South Africa, so it's a bit of an adaptation coming back here. I mean, I remember when we were growing up, like we all wanted to be a Springbok, or you want to play for the Proteas. Those are the two main ones I wanted to do. So my kids are playing a lot of football, and I wasn't exposed to it. That's why I think where Saracens warm up with football, I think the South Africans are the worst footballers, bar one or two Polynesians.
So that means it's just about the whole Saracens team then.
Ever to grace the Saracens training pitch. Football's a great. I think any sports are good. It just broadens your skill set, and you often see the guys with the best skill sets in a rugby team would have played a lot of other sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Now. Yeah, it's life after rugby. What are you doing these days? I know we've all seen you on SuperSport, but I suppose the obvious question is, do you want to coach at any point? Because you're quite technical, but what are you doing day to day?
Day to day, not much really. I'm doing weekends. I'm doing SuperSport. You'll see me there again. I've actually joined one of my friends, Sean Zilliger, better known as Zama. We've got a small little commercial property business. And then the rest of the time is split between trying to keep my 4 cars on the road because they're all aging from various ages, from 23 years old to like a couple of years old. And then, just spending some time in Cape Town. It's a great spot. I've been away for 5 years. Just came off a nice big holiday in our West Coast home in Azefontein for the first time in 6 years. So I'm trying to, still take it easy. I always said it's a sabbatical, but the sabbatical didn't really take place. I ended up doing quite a bit of stuff, and I'm really enjoying life after rugby. I think it's quite a big transition for all of us who finish, but I'm really looking forward to it, and it's nice to have the freedom. I always say to people, when you play rugby, you get in. This first week in January, you normally have your get together and a few fitness tests, and then you get given your yearly schedule. And you basically realize, okay, the next 40 weekends is rugby. So it's quite nice to have an open diary, and it's one of the challenges too, is how to manage your diary, which we never used to do. So I'm really looking forward to the challenge, and I'm also enjoying having some time off. As I mentioned before, you never really get a time to reflect and do things you want to do when you're playing rugby.
Yeah.
Because your weekends are taken up. Now I've got weekends, and Friday nights have become my favorite night ever.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, talking about that diary, some of you kids today go straight out of school into a rugby program, and by the time they're 30, they've never done anything. Everything's been managed for them, and then you suddenly maybe a career-ending injury, or they step out of rugby. It must be quite a big transition. You were obviously from a slightly different era where you probably didn't have that kind of protection that they have today in that environment. Can that be problematic for players?
I guess so. I mean, when we were playing, it's one of the things I responded to, but also one of the things that frustrated me after a while is like the fact that you're so organized, that your yearly training schedule, everything gets set out. Yes, 1 or 2 training schedules might change during a week, or you get injured and you go on a personalized program. But I mean, I really like the fact that, okay, this is my year, that's what you want. But then halfway through it, or towards the end of my career, you actually don't like that. You don't like to be so boxed in. That's one of the challenges now, is to run your diary, fill your diary. It seems a simple task, but it's something we never had to do. You got a lot more free time. What do you do in free time? Luckily for me, I've got quite a few hobbies. I want to get started again. Stuff rugby took away. Surfing, playing guitar, fixing up some old cars, playing a lot of golf. I try and fill the day with some nice stuff. But then at the end of the day, we've also got to launch a new career, which is a challenge in itself. And I suppose only time would tell. There's no rule book when it comes to retiring. I bounced ideas some of my friends who had similar length of career, and everyone's got a different opinion. So I actually want to take a bit of time off and do a bit of SuperSport television work. Do a bit of everything. To see where I might fit in best. So luckily for me, I'm buying some time and I'm enjoying it.
So Rugby World Cup 2019. The Springboks are a young team. There were a couple of old guys in there, but this should be the beginning of something rather than the destination. They did well and they won, and that's great. But how do we build on from that? Because already I just did a count the other day at Superhero Sunday, for instance. There were only 16 of the 33 men who went to the World Cup, if you count Neokani and Creel as well. that are going to be available in Super Rugby this year, which is quite a low number of a World Cup winning squad. So how do we sort of carry that momentum forward, A, into Super Rugby and B, into the Springboks later on in the year?
Yeah, that's the hard part, and that's why I think we're going to battle in the next few years till you get to the World Cup. And the main reason I say that is because, as the national coach, you don't have control over your squad. We're not like New Zealand where all your players are still based there, or England, although that might change because Saracens going down. There might be one or two players playing either in the Championship or in Europe, but you don't have control of your players based abroad. And it's hard. And the only time you do have control over them, according to IRB regulations, is in a World Cup year. The Springboks spent 22 weeks together, and finally it culminated in winning stuff. In every World Cup, we do give a good account of ourselves because, now we've got our best 30 players at our disposal, which you don't have in between these, in between the World Cups. This year, for example, the European-based players, the Japanese-based players, only gets released on the Sunday evening.
Yeah, before the first test.
Before the first test. So it does make it very hard. And it's such a competitive environment, international sport. It's just being a tiny bit off and the result goes against you. So I think it's going to be hard. And because of that reason that, we can't manage them as a squad of 30 or 40 of our best players because they spread all over the world. And that's unfortunately the South African landscape. But what it does create is a lot of opportunities. I know when we were young, playing for a Super Rugby franchise in the old Super 12, only every year a youngster, a franchise came through. Now with the high turnover of players, the same with, the high turnover of Springboks, and a lot of senior Springboks playing abroad, it gives so much opportunity for younger talent to come through. And that's where we're fortunate in South Africa, is that we're exposing so much talent. And we at the current time, realizing how deep these reaches are. And you don't become a good international player overnight. And that's the challenge we've got. It's going to take 30, 40 test matches for us to realize how good an international player you are. And unfortunately, when you're a younger player, you make mistakes. And you learn from those mistakes. And I think, it's for the rugby public and the coaching staffs of every Super Rugby franchise and the Springboks to have patience and realize that this is a hard process. But there's no doubt by the next World Cup we'll be competitive again. I just don't think how competitive we are going to be in between the World Cups is, what's up in the air. We don't know. And we don't know which players are going to be fit and who we're bringing back. Because after every World Cup, as South Africans have it, we have a big change in management.
Yeah.
And that's in itself is a big process of how building up a management. We saw it under Alistair and then Rassie took it over.
But on that point, Ninabe is going to be head coach. Yes. It hasn't been announced, but we all know that that's the case. And there will be Stick will still be around. Elliot Walters will still be in the setup. They are going to bring in Don Himon and as a consultant, and I think Dion Davids is going to handle lineouts. And so there is a fair amount of continuity from a coaching point of view. Ninabe and Rassie are very aligned. So would that be a benefit?
It is, but there's a different voice. The voice was Rassie Erasmus for the last 20 months. Now it's Jacques Ninabe. Yes, Rassie is still controlling it from the top, but it is different. There is different. I know they're very aligned, so traveling schedules, everything will be planned according to, the Springboks needs, which is important because it's tough competition to travel in and around it, the championship. So, but there is going to be a big change. This even for Jacques Ninabe is a big change. Because there's a lot of media, extra responsibilities. Jacques, I know him very well, lovely guy, magnificent defense coach, but he's a mechanic. He wants to be on the rugby. He's a rugby mechanic, defense mechanic. He wants to be spending time in front of the video screen, wants to spend time with players, individual tackle technique, and then in the team structure. And, unfortunately, being the national coach, that's...
You don't do that.
You get taken away from it. There are other responsibilities, media every day. And not only that, managing certain players, certain situations. So that's why it becomes quite tough if you're so involved in a certain structure when you become head coach.
Well, I wonder if, in this case, Rassie as director of rugby, and because they're so close, he might take on some of those responsibilities for Ninabe to allow him to continue working on the field. I don't know the answer to that, but I suspect that might be a clever way to go about it.
I think so, but I think obviously part of Rassie's job description is not only the Springboks. There's all the other competitions he's got to get up, all the other teams, all the Super Rugby franchises. He's got to look at all the structures and the way going forward. So that's Rassie's responsibility, not solely the Springboks.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice fit. And I think it's going to be a hard year for everyone involved because, obviously you've just come off a World Cup and it's always difficult to pick yourself up after a World Cup. And traditionally, we as South Africans have shown whenever we've won a World Cup, the next couple of years has been hard,
Yeah.
So, look, it's going to be a challenge. I like what we've done, it's having Jark taking over because, with Rugby, they've come a long, long way, from Free State days and then to the Stormers and then SA Rugby together. So, we've got the best minds in South African rugby involved, and that's what you want.
Yeah.
But there's a high turnover of players once again, and you'll have to look at new players because a lot of the older players that played in 2019 will probably not make it, to the next year. So, we will have to do careful planning where maybe we need some of our older statesmen to carry the team for 2 years and then move on, and hopefully by that stage you've got a good idea of who's taking you further. It's always tough, but it's exciting. As I mentioned, we've got so much talent. This year again, there's going to be we're going to be exposing 30 new players to Super Rugby, give and take, and all of those players have got an opportunity to play for the Springboks.
We'll get on to that Super Rugby in a moment, but just there's a lot of comparisons to this year, to 2008, because the British and Irish Lions came in 2009, they're coming in 2021. So this is, I suppose, the next cycle you're looking at is that's the key. And as you say, maybe Dwayne Vermeulen can play on until 2021 at least. Just your recollection. You were a 2007 World Cup winner. Then there was all the transition in 08, and you guys bounced back really well in 09. Maybe draw on some of those experiences. How can the Springbok team do something similar? Hopefully 2020 won't be as bad as 2008 was, but,
Yeah, look, upon reflection, 2008 was not that bad.
Well, you finished strong with 42-6 over England.
We were just inconsistent. So we lost a few games we shouldn't, but we beat the All Blacks down in Dunedin for the first time. Ricky January, show and go, chip kick, score. Obviously, record score till this day against England.
That was great. That performance was
42 points to 6. The reason why we were inconsistent, it was transitional year. Peter de Villiers took over from Jake White, which we obviously had a lot of success. We had a lot of senior players, great ages, like reasonably young when all of us won the World Cup. And we had a certain style we wanted to play, and Peter was implementing something different. Also, we had ELVs.
Yeah, that was the big
experimental law variations, which we trialed out in the Southern Hemisphere. It never got implemented in the Northern Hemisphere. So there's a lot of change. And because of that, we had inconsistencies in our performance. We also beat Australia at Ellis Park by 60 points, I think it was.
53 something. John Ginokwe scored 4 tries.
Scored 4 tries. So, it wasn't a complete disaster, but from the form we showed the previous year, there was definitely an inconsistency, and that's probably what the public was hammering on, the fact that we lost against the All Blacks by 2 points in Cape Town. Back then was quite a big thing. Now in reflection, it's not such a big thing. And then obviously 2009, I think towards the end of 2008, we sort of sat Peter down, and I think we got a blueprint of what we wanted to do. We obviously, our franchises was going good at that stage, which is a little bit different because we, most of our players were still based in South Africa. So 09 was a big year for us. And besides, beating the British and Irish Lions, we managed to beat the All Blacks 3 times in a row. We beat them in Hamilton to win our second Tri-Nations, won our first one in 2004. So there was a transitional phase, but we were quite settled, I think, as a player group. I think where the difference this year is obviously there's a new coach in Jacques Nienaber, although he's been in the Springbok structure, give and take, for a long time, since first time Jacques worked with the Springboks, I think was 2011, before the 2011 World Cup. So that's going on 10 years now. Yeah. So he understands what's required to coach the Springboks. I think maybe a higher turnover of players. And as I mentioned, how do you manage the squad? How do you bring guys back? Because it's also hard. A lot of these players have gone on long-term overseas contracts for their first year. So do they get released? Do the club release them in time? How nicely do you work with all of them? And I think Rassie's key to his success is that he sat down with the clubs individually and said, listen, there's a plan for each and every one of you guys. So maybe not use you for every test match the year before the World Cup, but World Cup, I'm going to press on you to come for 22 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, by the next World Cup, we'll be competitive because we'll actually be able to manage our player group. When you don't manage them, it's hard because players come and go every week.
So we've got Super Rugby coming up now. Again, going back to those 2008-9 comparisons, the Bulls were dominant, the Stormers were good, the Sharks were always competitive. And now this year, we didn't have a side in the semi-finals last year, which is the first time in a long time. No South African side even made the last four. What was your take on Superhero Sunday, just seeing the first proper hit out for all the teams against each other?
Yeah, it is hard, I think, for a couple of reasons. Is that, we didn't have disposal to all our best players. Some of our Springboks are still getting phased back. And then I think for all the coaches, it was an edgy experience because it's almost like the result mattered a lot.
Which it shouldn't in those kind of games.
I don't think it should. What should matter is work rate, structure, line-out, the blueprint that you set out, the culture that you set out. Are you getting dominance in the scrum, the line-out, your defense? Is your attacking structure? We don't mind individual errors. Individual errors in these games always are there because players have trained for 5 months, but they haven't actually played in the intensity of a warm-up game in front of 25 or 30,000 people. So I think from that point of view, we probably looked a little bit underdone. But you can understand why the coaches was looking for a result because everyone is new in their role. Obviously, Puerto is still over from last year, but so the Sharks, the Lions, the Stormers, it's all young, inexperienced coaches or experienced coaches, but inexperienced at the Super Rugby level. Yeah. And therefore, I think it was important to get a result, to have something positive to feed off from. My approach probably would have been a bit different. The result probably wouldn't have mattered, but I would have wanted to see work rate, physicality, how quickly we set in structure, how effective we can be in stuff we want to be. So creating opportunities, kicking to touch, how effective is our line-out maul? And we probably didn't see enough of that. In contrast, I watched some of the All Black warm-up games. Same thing there. A lot of their top internationals weren't playing, but their focus was different. It wasn't result-based. It was, how good are our skill sets, our work rate, how quickly can we set. So, from what I saw from the two, I think we've got a fair way to go to compete against the All Black sides again. But then, talking from the Stormers' point of view, we've got quite a nice start. We're playing the Hurricanes, which is very hard. To beat them as well has lost Plum's moved on. Yeah. A new coaching staff, so they'll be a little bit nervous coming down to Cape Town. First game of the season is never easy. So maybe it gives us opportunity to get off to a good start because we've got, 7 home games in 9 or so weeks. So, we've got opportunity to get off to a good start. But, there's a lot of work. And it's hard for the South African franchise at the moment because it's a tough competition just because of travel logistics. Your player squad ran through injury. It's 16 weeks. You've got to try and keep a team together. Again, we've had high turnover in players. I know we're especially thin at centre down in Cape Town. We've got Jamie Roberts who's coming in from
Do you think that's a good acquisition? I mean, the guy was a hell of a good player 5-7 years ago. Is he still good enough?
I think so. Whenever you move from competition to a different competition, so from Premiership to Super Rugby or from Bath and their structures to Western Province or Stormers and their structures, there is a acclimatization period. So don't expect too much up front, but he's a quality player. He's a nice bloke. He's going to add a lot of value on and off the field. It's just about how quickly you find your feet. And sometimes when you're a player moving, I've obviously moved through in between a few competitions. You just need that one game, You need that one game where things roll your way, the game comes to you and you have a massive impact on the game, and then all of a sudden you're flying. So we will hope for Jamie to come in here and fit in.
Absolutely. And, the other backdrop to South Africa's Super Rugby sides, all of them, financially, every union in this country is struggling. I mean, the Stormers' problems are well documented. But the Bulls, they're in financial trouble. The Sharks had a lot of issues, and I believe they were given a big bailout quite recently by a sponsor. How does that affect players, knowing what's going on in the background, or do players not really get too concerned about that unless their paycheck's not paid, obviously?
No, I think definitely had an influence on the mindset down in Cape Town the last 2 seasons. And I suppose the fact that there wasn't ever, my understanding, clarity on the situation. It's hard to squash rumors. The next thing, the rumor down the corridor is, are we getting paid? Are my contracts getting renewed? And I think that's a hard thing down in Cape Town was, we couldn't really move forward with our contracting of new players. Who do we keep? Who's going? how do you manage your squad? And that's imperative, especially in the South African landscape. You can't wait till everyone's out of contract and then go, listen, we've got to sign 15 guys. You'll never be able to afford them.
Yeah.
If you can be proactive and move, way ahead of their deadlines, then you've got a chance. So I think that's been hard. I think the landscape in South Africa is hard, but I also think there's much room improvement in our contracting structure and from our franchises to be more proactive.
Yeah.
We know we've got a lot of talent, but we can't be arrogant and say this is the only talent we've got, because often we see it in cricket now in the Proteas, and I'm not saying rugby is going to go have the same issue, but a Schalk Burger or AB de Villiers is not a once in a generation player. They're a once in a 5 generation player. That player just doesn't get born tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we've been spoiled in South Africa for a long time. Players go and the next bloke come in and he looks just as good. Victor Matfield leaves, the next bloke, Lodejager, comes and he looks just as good.
Mm.
And I don't think we should rest on our laurels and say that's going to keep on happening, because one day we'll wake up and says, listen, where's all our locks gone?
Yeah.
And look at now, all our locks at the World Cup plying their trade abroad.
Yeah.
So, the next generation's got to step up, but it's not going to say that the next generation is going to be as good. We've got a good chance in South Africa.
It's not a guarantee.
So I think, although it's hard to keep our players, I think there's more effort from both entities. And you get 2 types of players, in my opinion. You get the one who's always going to leave early, predominantly because he doesn't back himself to play a major role in the Springbok jersey. And you get the player who thinks he's good enough to play for the Springboks. And you'll always be able to hold on to that player for a longer period of time. And you see it in the Cape Town with a bunch of Springboks who's re-signed. Main reason, is obviously they love Cape Town and the Stormers, but, they back themselves to play for the Springboks for another 4 years.
Yeah. And talking about that pathway, one of the biggest pathways is obviously the junior Springboks, and your dad was the SA under 21s, now it's SA under 20. They haven't had great success over the last few years. You guys built on the 2002 team. Well, the 99 team won the original Junior World Championships in Argentina, which had John Smith and a few others. Then the 2002 team was you and Free Dupré and John Smith and all those guys. And then 2005, even under Peter de Villiers, there was a few of the Springboks that came through. So how important is it that the junior team eventually comes through? The 2012 junior team at Andre Pollard and a few of the guys that are in, and we haven't had that for a few years. Is that a worry for you?
I think it is. I thought they were quite unlucky in a couple of them.
Certainly 2014 they were unlucky.
They were unlucky, but I suppose it is a big worry. Our success on Jake White was pretty much based on the World Cups he won, Junior World Cups he won in 99 and us in 2002. And that formed the basis of his team to win the World Cup in 2007. Look, we're producing so much talent, and a lot of talent's getting exposed everywhere. So we should be very competitive. I think, if you look at English football, they went through a tough time. And for the last, 4 years, they've pretty much been dominating every single age category in the world, junior football. And I think finally that's starting to filter through in the Premier League. You see a lot more young English players getting exposure. They're playing in Europe, and also their national sides looking stronger than they have in recent past. So I think there's definitely something that we as South Africans, we probably got the right structures in place. We had a bit of bad luck, but I think that should become a big focus for us. We should target that as one of our big events in a year. And I think once that focus comes, I know they've got a good coaching staff in there. Once that focus returns, it can only be good for us.
And that's where Rossi comes in. That's part of his brief to get those guys.
Part of his brief. And you get those players to play South African rugby, understand what it means to play for the Springboks or the junior Springboks or Springboks in the 20s. And, they entered with the same mindset that, we were playing for the Springboks. All of a sudden, we as South African build up a resilience and a reputation. And you'll be amazed how far that reputation goes, because we beat the super generation of the All Blacks, like the who's who from, the All Blacks team who won the World Cup twice. And we beat them in 2002 with our super generation of players. And that mental edge goes a long way. They sort of closes out a lot of doubt. And I think that's what probably helped our generation beat them so often. Obviously our best was 3 times in 2009, but every year we beat them from 2004 onwards. We beat them every single year. So And I think a lot of that's down to 2002, where, the first time we encountered each other, where we showed resilience.
Yeah, you beat them in a semi-final at Rao.
Yeah. And I think, that's where the blueprint of our team sort of, the foundation gets laid, and I think you want to see that from the junior Springboks.
Yeah. And talking about those great clashes with the All Blacks, because, I guess you're synonymous with some of the clashes you had. I mean, one that stands out for me was 2005 Newlands, where you beat them 22-16, you and Jerry Collins. I just remember you could hear the collisions from the sideline. What's your recollection of that game? Late Jerry Collins.
Yeah, look, whenever you play Jerry, it's like one of those, you're never going to back down. You can't back down. And if you do back down, you know that, he's just going to run at you for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
So you just, I suppose I wouldn't do that anymore, but I remember catching the kickoff 3 or 4 times in a row and just running straight at him.
Yeah, well, that's how I remember it.
I didn't even look left, right. Anyway, I just looked at Jerry and said, listen, okay, let's have a flat out crack at each other. And he did the same when he caught the ball, he ran straight at me. They came off second best, quite a few of them, but the main thing is you just didn't back down.
Yeah,
you got the ball, and that was the heartbeat of the pack back then. We had Buckies, who was as fierce as anything, and me and John Smith, we just had to get stuck into them, and we knew that if we can put them under physical pressure, over 80 minutes, we've got a real good chance. We obviously had a really good back line. Brian Abana, John de Villiers. I think he scored an intercept try in the first half.
And it was after Matfield clattered Carter late.
So Matfield actually clattered Byron Keller.
Oh, Keller, excuse me.
Keller late. And I suppose, you play the All Blacks, and back then we used to see the haka, and for us, we understood the haka as a challenge. It's a big challenge, and not to disappoint them, and not disappoint them by, they're expecting the biggest game of the year. Let's give it to them. And look, we were still a team. We won it in 2004, by beating them in Joburg and then the Wallabies down in Durban. So, there was a lot riding on that game, because that was, our chance at winning it twice in a row. And we came about, 90 seconds short of retaining it in Dunedin. Kevin Milamu scored off the back of
that one too. Yeah, and that was just a miscommunication in the line out that went over the back, didn't it?
Yeah, but
it's those margins you talk about.
So it's such fine margins. Yeah. But looking back now, we were very competitive against the All Blacks in most of those games. Obviously there was a few games which you got wrong, but that was for us. That was the biggest game. We loved playing against the All Blacks, and again, I think it stems back from that game in 2002 where we beat them, and a lot of those players was coming through into the system. We played against them, and we had belief that we were better than them.
What was your a guy like Jerry Collins, what was your relationship with the guys off the field?
It's super relationship. Look, on the field it was brutal. And it's one like, it's not often you tackle a mate, there's not always going to be a follow through. Like, you want to make a big hit on him, but there's not going to be a little elbow in the face or a little get up and bump him with a knee against there. Jerry Collins, either way, whether I was tackling him or he was tackling me, it was always a little follow through, a little bit of a short arm jab, or a little bit of a high shot, or a little, and that was just his role in the team, and I knew that was my role in the Springbok team. But as soon as the end whistle went, there was nothing. It was a hug, it was a chat, often a swap of jerseys, followed by quite a few cold beers. So that's the way rugby should be playing. It was a guy who never whinged. He did his thing, I did my thing. Not always above board. We went a little bit overboard with each other, but it's just what rugby stands for. You want to play against your mate, you want to smash him. But as soon as that, there's no hang-ups. That's rugby. You did your job. Let's have a good chat, have a beer, and that's the way I approach the game.
Was he the toughest opponent, or who was the toughest opponent you think you?
So Jerry was tough of the physical challenge, and you got the feeling that he wants to hurt you. But the toughest blokes I played against is probably the two international flankers I cut my teeth against was George Smith and Richie McCaw. And they were brilliant players. And I realized because I'm a bit younger than them, as a youngster, that, this is going to be tough, but it's also going to be good for me, because it's one of those type of rivalries where you do one good thing and they do two good things, and you keep on chasing each other. You just became better and better. George was probably the most natural, talented player, just good timing, nice little skill set. Richie was tough, just competitive. absolute worker, and the fact that he never lost any rugby games really. I mean, what did he lose? 15 test matches?
Yeah, 100,
150 odd. And then obviously I probably was like a bit of both, and I had a bit of, I probably had more physical attributes, natural physical attributes than them, a bit bigger, a bit more aggressive. So I think like all of us complement each other well. I played in a loose show and with George a couple of times at the Barbarians. It was in 2009 when we beat the All Blacks. We actually beat them for a fourth time, Barbarians, against the All Blacks at Twickenham. And it was Rocky Elsom. I was number 8, and George was open side. And then 2008 played Barbarians. I was number 8 again. Richie McCaw open side, Jerry Collins blind side. And you just realized, why they're such tough players to play against, and, why for such a long time we were in competition together. Obviously, you can't play against those guys by yourself, and I was very fortunate in South Africa for a long time, for all those big clashes, have Johan Smith with me, which is a great player. Our eighthman, we had a lot of eighthman come and go. Like we obviously had Jacques Renier, we had Big Joe Finnicke, we had PSB's coming back later. Obviously in 07 World Cup, Donnie Rousseau did a phenomenal role there. But for a long time it was me and Johan against, Jerome, Kano, and Richie McCaw, or Rocky Elsom and George Smith. And I mean, it was a golden era, I think, for loose forwards in the Southern Hemisphere. And it was never easy, but I'm thankful for that, because I think that just makes you a better player.
Yeah, for sure. And are there any games that you would call your favorites, or maybe your worst and your favorite, or is it not that easy to? Yeah,
I mean, look, there's a lot of games I enjoyed, predominantly playing against the All Blacks, a lot of them, also playing against England, especially our win against England was magnificent. The 42-6, no one gave us a chance.
The 36-0?
36-0. I didn't play that. I was
suspended. Of course, you were suspended for that one, but you were on the sidelines. Did the Springboks reach near perfection in that first half?
I think, yeah. We played really well in that whole World Cup, except the final was quite cagey. England came to us. They played in Bloemfontein and Pretoria in June, and we gave them 58 and 60 points respectively, then 36-0. So we thought, okay, they done and dusted. And then you get them back in the final. And the English side then went back to what they know makes them hard to. So don't play any rugby, kick it, scrum, maul, tackle. And they were as competitive as anything. So it was a hard game, although we were in control, I feel, 99% of the time. It was a tough game to put away, where if you think the Boks this year sort of never really got going until the final.
Yeah.
They always felt like after a performance there was something left in the tank.
Yeah, they peaked at the right time, didn't they?
and they got it. How you get it under that amount of pressure, how do you get it right in the final? I didn't think they even know, but they got it spot on.
Yeah.
Like our World Cup was the other way around. I think we played very well for the whole tournament, and then quite cagey in the final. But obviously a World Cup win is spectacular. And I mean, the main thing is relief. It's such a high pressure situation.
Yeah.
You get to the final, all you want to do is get the game done with and, get the result. I mean, obviously within there's some individual performances, like when you start out your career, like my second start for the Springboks was in Cape Town against Ireland in 2004, got a man of the match at Newlands. It's probably one of my favorite, because that whole week I was like, we need to put a big one in here. I want to have a man of the match. And you want to do it at your first home test match, don't you? So like I love playing at Newlands.
Yeah.
Every time we played a test match here, I was fortunate to play quite a few. I gave it a bit extra. I just love playing in Cape Town in front of the Newlands crowds. Back then, we obviously were so well supported. We're averaging 40,000 people per game.
Yeah.
And I lived right next to the stadium, like 50 meters from the stadium, and 5 Fourth Road for 10 years. So I sort of just snuck through the railway stand onto the pitch, and off I went. So nice. Look, there's too many to remember.
And stadiums? I mean, besides Newlands? I mean, I remember you scored a try at Croke Park famously, which was...
Yeah, that's a great experience, Croke Park. I like Cardiff.
It's a great stadium.
Principality Stadium is the best one, I think, for atmosphere. I can't believe they ever leave the roof open. Close the roof, get the atmosphere, get better weather as well.
Yeah.
And then you just have a full-on rip. And the Welsh can sing, which is amazing. Yeah. I like Newlands. Twickenham's a nice stadium, but I don't quite get the same atmosphere as I get in the Welsh stadium. Obviously, the Viva in and Ireland is really nice.
Yeah.
Australia, funnily enough, doesn't have a lot of great rugby stadiums. They're all dual purpose, so you don't actually have the best one for atmosphere there is probably Brisbane, Suncorp.
Yeah.
And then we also played in a ridiculous stadium in Rugby World Cup quarterfinal in 2003. I think it's now redubbed the Etihad, but it's the Aussie Rules stadium with a closed roof. They actually play cricket, indoor cricket in there, which is
Melbourne, eh?
It's in Melbourne, It's just an unbelievable stadium. And my favourite stadium in New Zealand will be the new one in Dunedin, the Forsyth Bar, the closed stadium. It's probably got the best atmosphere. Love touring New Zealand all the years. I actually love all the countries. Love Argentina too. We have steak and red wine, obviously. And, we travel to great places, even like Italy is a great place to travel. Or even though rugby is not that great. Japan, Japan, I spent 2 seasons there. What an experience.
Yeah. Well, we could talk all day, but I think we're going to just, if you had to do it all over again, would you do anything differently?
Nah, no chance. I finished school my first year with a cricket contract, so I was bound to play cricket.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And so playing for Stellenbosch University, playing for Boland Academy every weekend, and there was a reason why I still went to play some Scallum rugby on the side. I enjoyed it, so I can't really change everything. I sort of fell into rugby, and then the first guy to spot me was Jake White after school. Saw me playing for Stellenbosch University and sort of asked, where you at? What you doing? I said, no, I'm playing cricket. So he said, why don't you just...
Knowing Jake would have what are you talking about?
How old are you? And I said, no, 18. He says, no, come join me. It's under 21 camp. And that's how I fell into rugby, and just, luckily, obviously, just went my way. I would say the one thing, for everyone out there, I loved rugby. But I think the big thing, with youngsters now, where I would want to see more from them, and having played with a lot of generations of rugby players, and when you do get your opportunity, just give it a whirl. I often see players get an opportunity and they sort of play within themselves, and they hope they get another opportunity. The one thing that I really wanted to do is, when I got an opportunity, is do it on my way, but go flat out. I will make mistakes, but I think no one could ever doubt saying that, look, he gave it 120%. So no, I wouldn't change anything. I loved everything. We made mistakes, but the nice thing about making mistakes is you can pass that knowledge to someone else, and hopefully he doesn't make it, and you learn from it. Now, one of the things I enjoyed of my career probably the most is the fact that, from when I started, was seen as a one-trick pony, and then over the years, to extend your career and through injuries, you had to change. You had to sort of change the way you play, and for me, that was one of the most gratifying things, is sort of changing your role, playing all around the back row, going from a complete basher and a bruiser to playing something a little bit different was a nice project for me.
Well, never change as a person. Thanks, Schalk.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to the Maverick Sports Podcast, and keep reading the Daily Maverick for in-depth news and sports coverage. Let's take a few seconds to tell you about Maverick Insider, our membership community that keeps Daily Maverick going. For a small contribution a month, you can help Daily Maverick survive and even thrive. Our journalism is free to all, but we need your support to keep it that way. All you need to do is go to dailymaverick.co.za/insider and sign up for as much or as little as you want. It makes a huge difference to us and to South Africa. And we promise not to blow it on a private box at the cricket at the Wanderers this weekend. Please also remember to subscribe to the Maverick Sports Podcast and to our Maverick Sports newsletter. Thank you, and until next time.